Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin podcast. I am a woman on a mission to help you get the Zettelkasten of your dreams on your work table beside you. Well, we are continuing with our gentle introduction to the Zettelkasten with our Pre-Zettelkasten work. We're playing around with the concepts of a Zettelkasten in a very gradual way so that you can see how a Zettelkasten evolves and develops, so that by the time we do things with the cards, you'll understand why we're doing them. And as we build up actual components of the Zettelkasten, you'll understand why they are there. Well, we've been collecting notes for a number of days now, and our notes have basically been of two kinds. Some of our notes we've collected directly onto file cards, and some we've captured while reading a book. Well, tonight we're going to just continue capturing notes that we read in a book or watch in a video where we're using the different form of the card, where we have the card straight up and we're putting multiple notes on one card. Continue doing that, but that's not what we're going to go forward with tonight. Tonight, we're going to take a closer look at the cards that we've already made out in the form of a file card, where we're using a line side and we're making some notes. So now I'm going to come over to the down-facing camera and I'll show you what we're going to do next with these cards. Okay, here's an example card. This is one of the ones that I made out using the methods that we've been talking about for the past couple of days, just as you go through life, capturing a thought or an idea. This one happened to be a thought that occurred to me, and I have it written down. Learning can be measured rather easily, but understanding is harder to assess. Well, it's an interesting thought or concept, but it's time now to add a little more to this thought. It's time for me to respond to this thought in a way, preferably, that personalizes it to myself, because information that is related to oneself is most easily remembered. So it's a good idea when you make cards like this to personalize it and put a little bit of your own heart and mind into the card. So I'm going to add my reflection to this that relates to how I feel about this card. Okay, now I've added my own personal reflection to this card. Learning feels like work, like I'm pounding something into my brain. But understanding is full of joy and excitement. That's how I can tell those two apart. So can you see the difference between this one, which is more informational, and this one, which is more reactive? Let me show you a couple of other examples that are complete. This one comes from a YouTube follower that dates back to August 10th of 2024, and the follower made the remark that, oh, one thing, don't forget the role of metaphor in compressing memories into smaller neural networks. And I had to ponder that. Metaphor, analogy, interesting. But that left me with a couple of questions. Am I to find an existing metaphor that fits this memory? Or maybe compose a metaphor to fit the memory? So here my reflection is in the form of questions that I need to ask myself. How would this play into this? Questions are very, very valid responses. And this one came from a YouTube recording where the speaker was Terry Savelle Foy, and she relates a story where she's presenting a person who adds insight to the little statements that we say about ourselves to give it more clarity. And what she adds to them is, and that's just the way I like it. So she suggests adding that phrase whenever you make a pronouncement to yourself. And my reaction to that is this one has helped me over many a spot where I might have gotten stuck. Because when I think about it, I could say something like, oh, I'm not good at mastering new things. And that's just the way I like it. Oh, no, that's not just the way I like it. All right, then, get busy. So you see, that kind of a phrase has just been something that I keep in my back pocket now, that just whenever I find myself saying something that is discouraging to myself or something that is not uplifting to myself, I just throw on the phrase, and that's just the way I like it. And a lot of times it snaps me right out of it. Okay, so I hope that you will add your own personal reflection to all of the notes that you've created so far that are on regular file cards. Now, if you've collected notes on these little ring things or some other abbreviated way that you've created notes, it's a good time to take out your file cards, transfer your temporary notes onto one of your regular file cards, and add your reflection. It's going to turn out that your reflection is a very, very important part of your Zettelkasten card. Your reflection will help you know whether the card is important to you or not, whether it deserves a prominent place in your memory or not. It will just turn out to give you a lot of downstream value as you begin to make a habit of always including something of yourself every time you make out one of these cards. Now, these cards, we're going to end up calling these main cards, but there'll be time to learn the vocabulary later. But these collections of cards that we're getting so far that aren't real Zettelkasten cards yet, they don't have numbers or things like that, they're not complete, but we're keeping them because they're interesting thoughts. These are going into an area of a Zettelkasten. It's a type of auxiliary box, which means, of course, that it's not really an official part of a Zettelkasten, but the reality is most of us have one of these, and that we'll call the rumination box or the incubation box or the gathering box. People have lots of different names for it, but the reality is, as long as you're keeping a Zettelkasten, there are always going to be a certain number of these cards that exist in an incomplete fashion that are not fully filed. Our challenge as we get mature Zettelkastens going is not letting this stack get too thick, but there'll be plenty of time to worry about that later. Right now, just start building your reflections onto the cards that you're making. You'll be glad you did, and we'll come back tomorrow for another very, very casual, very gentle step, easing you into a Zettelkasten. See you then. Bye-bye.